Let's talk about your SCBA. The fancy term there is NFPA 1981. I won't bore you with the 3 paragraphs here, but what you need to understand about it is that they had a heat and flame resistance test. They mounted your face piece on a head form and they blasted it with a what? Convection oven for 15 minutes at 95 degrees Celsius. So that's around 200 degrees Fahrenheit with a simulated breathing thing on it so that it acts like it's breathing. And then after they did that, they did a direct flame contact for 10 seconds and they dropped it onto something to basically simulate you and I running into something. Here's a guy crawling out of a burning window to be rescued, and he runs into the sharp corner of a wardrobe or something. So it shall not fail during that. And here's an interesting part that I didn't know. Your lens cannot incur damage that obscures your ability to see worse than 2100. Well, whatever that number is, because I got 2070 in one of my eyes. I have to wear, obviously, corrected lenses. So basically, your SCBA face piece cannot fail and cannot obscure your vision in that 200-degree environment. Well, what about the new test? That heat and flame resistance test for NFPA 1981 in the 2013 version includes 2 additional tests where they elevate the temperature in that, and they add some more flame, and they add some more radiant heat, and they do the same thing. They drop it and run into something. Now this time we're going 260 degrees Celsius, which is around 500 degrees for 5 minutes prior to direct flame contact for 10 seconds and then dropping it on something. So it's still required to keep the visual acuity and maintain positive pressure. Why is that? And that says for 24 minutes. Any loss of positive pressure during that test results in a failure. It's pretty darn good, but is it? We're going to show you different versions of that. Now, I want to show you something that I learned from a very smart group of people called the Illinois Fire Service Institute. You can look them up. They've worked with NIST and published a lot of cool things, and one of them is their most recent Facepiece study, which has a lot more accurate information than some of the older Facepiece studies. They compare all 3 different types of face pieces, and they also show you how to do an inspection of your face piece with a cell phone, which is pretty brilliant. And what you do is you take your SCBA, take your mask, and you lay it on a table like this. And then you shine your light on it. And look what you see in the shadow. You see thermal damage, which you wouldn't normally see. You see that bend, that wave. You see micro cracking, which you wouldn't see. Because a micro crack, when it's exposed to more heat, becomes a bubble and then becomes a hole, right? And remember, your glass transition temperature, fancy word for when that polycarbonate starts to melt or soften, is around 300 degrees. So if it's softening at 300, and then I run into what they call mechanical damage, which means I hit something, something hit me. And then here's the most famous part that we all do. We attempt to clear that off of our face piece by doing what? Wiping our mask with a gloved hand and developing a hole in a system that works off positive pressure with a hole in it. How long is it going to maintain that pressure? Not very long. And then the superheated gases are going to come in and it's game over for us. 2 to 3 millimeters thick. Obviously, it is the weakest link. And it's stated over and over again, every one of the studies I read, it is a critical potential failure point. We have to understand that gives us an advantage because we can wear it and we can see, but you've got to protect that face piece. And how do you protect that face piece? You keep the environment cool, you stay below the thermal layer, and you don't stand up and do dumb things in it when you may need that protection, that little extra few seconds of performance, because your average temperature at which that lens failed was 356 degrees. You don't want that to be the end result. It's plain and simple, because then we are a victim at that point. This comes from Mark Falkenham's line of duty death, which is why the standard changed. And it says in the test that basically at 500 degrees after fast moving convection currents, this mask failed in 148 seconds. That's not just temperature. He was at the top of a flow path, the top of a chimney, fast moving convection currents. You can watch the ATF video, you can see the mannequin, and you can watch the heat hitting his mask, and you can watch it start to wave. You can see the bubble form, and you can see the whole form after that. And you can listen to the chilling mayday and understand why this will get us in trouble if we're not careful. This is our weakest link. And here's why you need to care, because not every department has the same mask and the same standard. This mask comes from a department in Louisiana. This is what they're wearing as of 2 years ago. So that's prior to NFPA 1981. Looks like a scuba mask. If you were been on the department long as I have been, when I was growing up, I had a Scott mask with a corrugated hose that looked like the elephant trunk, and it looked like this with the steel bottle. Then you have two different versions of NFPA 1981 2007 standard, and then you have the 2013 standard, all of which fail at different points. Well, which one are you wearing? You could have a department that has all three of those, such as this one had an AV 2000, which is your 2007 standard. This particular department had this occur after I taught a class in Woodlands, Texas. These two rookies did not come to the class. They stood on the front porch of a double-wide mobile home with a decay stage fire, forced the door with a hose line that wasn't charged. As they're standing with the door forced, it did exactly like the NIST Facepiece study said. It went from a decay stage fire. The front door literally breathed life into the smoldering fire, and the rush of the heat from now blazing living room transformed the relatively cool environment on the front porch into an inferno. These gentlemen were standing in a black convective smoke convection current that was just blasting their facepiece, and one of them realized something was wrong and wiped his facepiece and noticed parts of his hood fell off. He was just standing in a convection oven. So at 280 degrees Celsius, 536 degrees Fahrenheit is when that failure point is. He was smart enough to move away. Here's what Illinois Fire Service Institute did a great study. You can watch it. It's like a 3.5-minute video. You can pull it up on Facebook or Google it. Here's why you should watch it. 3 different face pieces, 3 different standards. Same test, same convection current, same temperatures, and they show when each one of them fails. Obviously, the one on the right is the newer mask, but I want you to look at the differences when they fail. The first actual failure starts showing up in 1 minute and 4 seconds. 1 minute and 4 seconds. Look at 1 minute and 34 seconds. The weakest, older mask, a bubble has formed. The one in the middle, you've got micro cracking and some failure, softening, and then you got micro cracking on the newer mask. When you look at the total failure of all 3, anywhere from 2 minutes and 18 seconds to 10 minutes and 4 seconds. But let me ask you a question. If the standard says it fails when I can't see, right here I can still see, but this happens around the 5-minute mark and 4-minute mark. Are you going to be able to find your way out? You can't see, you can't feel, and then I bump into something with that? It's not good. So this is a free video. You can pull it up. I'll send you the link when we share the Dropbox folder with you with the recording. This is our mask, depending on which one you wear. Which standard have you got? Have you got the 2007 mask, one of the 2 variations, or do you have the 2013? Does your department have an older one? Now, all that to being said, what's happening on the inside of the mask when you're in that environment? I've heard from different people about air in my bottle getting hot, what temperature that may be. I found anecdotal data, not evidence-based data, until recently when I read the NIST technical note on exploratory study of airflow from an SCBA to elevated temperatures. What that means is they took an air pack and put a mask on a mannequin, and they put thermocouples inside the mannequin's mouth. And they made it breathe, basically. And they basically measured the temperature inside the mannequin's mouth. Why should you care? Because at what temperature can you not breathe anymore, no matter what's happening to your mask? Before the mask fails, at 300 seconds, at 212 degrees Fahrenheit exposure, the inside of your mouth can be 105 degrees. You can survive that. After 600 seconds, it can be upwards of 123. You're starting to get damage then. At 900 seconds, it's 134 degrees. That's not good, and that's in 212 degrees. Let's step it up a notch. Now we're at 302 degrees Fahrenheit for 300 seconds. Mind you, this is convection currents blasting that mask and that bottle. Your inside of your mouth can be 123 degrees Fahrenheit. At 600 seconds, the inside of your mouth is 149 degrees. You're in trouble. At 900 seconds, the inside of your mouth, you're starting to have some major damage, and you may not live. 163 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on how long you're exposed to it, how deep you breathe. In the overall summary, in less than 7 minutes, the air inside your mouth can increase 16 degrees Celsius, which is 60 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a big swing. And after 20 minutes at 212, the air inside of our mouth can reach 131 degrees. 212 degrees is not that hot. That's what you boil water at. There's some saunas that get pretty close to that, or steam rooms. After 210 seconds at 302, the SCBA, the air inside of it, reached 104. After 20 minutes at nearly 400 degrees, the inside of your mouth, the air inside your mouth, is a fatal temperature of 205 degrees. They've proven that breathing humid air at 212 produces respiratory burns, and an actual burn report of burn victims showed that 185 degrees of superheated air for 20 seconds produced a fatal burn. This is why you should care, because I was always taught about the mask failing. Well, it doesn't matter if the mask fails if my lungs have already failed. Your lungs can fail before the mask fails. Nobody told me that, because we don't read all this stuff. So what about our coat and pants? Well, it doesn't do any good if I can't breathe, but here's some food for thought for you. This is why I'm so passionate about the thermal environment. This is what we can't see that's occurring to us, and we're well protected. The victim doesn't have that luxury. They're feeling pain at 109 to 109 to 113, and 131 degrees, they're burned just like we are. Their property starts to break down at 200 degrees, producing flammable vapors. And your gear, my gear, is breaking down between 165, your bottle, to upwards of 572 to 600 degrees max. So do you want to push it that far, or would you rather be intelligently aggressive and use the nozzle and cool the environment long before it gets there and make it better for the victim, their life, their property, and you? I'm not asking you not to go into fire. All of us signed up to go in there. But when you go in, make it better and protect those that you swore to do so, right? Because this is a friend of mine's gear as he walked out of a double wide trailer and 2 propane tanks ruptured. Should this concern you? He felt nothing other than, he said when he heard the pop, he said, "I'm dead." And his bottle was ruined. And those are the letters from the department burned into that moisture barrier. He said he felt nothing and he walked away without injury. He said he changed his shorts afterwards, but he walked away without injury. The gear did its job, but he felt nothing. Now, if 2 tanks flare and go over your shoulders and you don't feel anything, think about the environment you're crawling in and what that's going to do to you. If you look really closely in the upper left-hand corner, that moisture barrier is cracked. It wouldn't have taken much more before it got to him. So remember what I told you in the beginning. NFPA 1971 has more than 70 tests for PPE. And my favorite one is the forced air oven test. Convection oven. Remember that number? 500 degrees. There it is again. For 5 minutes, and fabrics cannot shrink more than 10%. Here's my question to you. How many tests do you have to prevent this? This is zero visibility. This is your convection oven. This is what you're crawling in, what I'm crawling in. This is the drill we did recently in Richmond, Virginia. This is 1 room away from the fire room, in between the stairs and the entry point. What's your test to prevent that? You're going to pencil the ceiling. You're going to wait till your ears get hot. You're going to stick your hand up in it. Too late. Your gear is becoming saturated. Your mask is softening. Your radio is beginning to experience damage. Your tick is facing things that will cause it to fail, and you don't know it. Because whether you use that tick or this tick, it's still the same fast-moving convection currents that is moving from hot to cold, transferring energy to everything it touches, including us. And we can't judge that based on our ears and our eyes anymore. We have to use extra things such as a diagnostic tool to simply see the problem and then fix the problem. I'm not asking you to keep the tick in front of your face the whole time. I'm asking you to look, see, and fix it. And don't squirt, it don't work like in this example here. So you were taught these basic modes of heat transfer in probably your firefighter recruit school: conduction, convection, and radiation, but it occurs in reverse to you in a fire. Convection and radiation hits you, and then your gear is saturated, and then you bump into something, and then you experience conduction, direct contact. It's a lot hotter than we realize. And when your gear is saturated, we're the baked potato. It's too late at that point. So we got to come out and get out of the gear. If you study firefighter CPR, where they drag firefighters out and they've got the drills on how they pop the gear off of them, you'll notice there are some documented incidents where guys and gals have taken their gloves off and decided to grab a hold of their loved one, their firefighter, their friend, their brother, their sister, and put their hands on this gear. What do you think happened to their hand? Brother Brown, who's on the call, understands that when we did training a couple years ago, we told every firefighter when we came out the last part of the drill that we did in thermal imaging training, do not take your gloves off and grab your helmet. But yet a couple of them still did. And when they grabbed that helmet, you heard psst and ow. That was not good. Yeah. And yes, EJ, very good point. Medics should be careful too, because they don't know. We got to tell them, don't put your bare hands on that gear. Get the gear off of them, right? Remember I told you in the beginning, the thing that shocked me more than anything was the SCBA cylinder, high temperature exposure. It says in the instruction manual, a carbon composite cylinder that reaches a temperature of 160 degrees Fahrenheit or more should be sent to an authorized cylinder requalification facility. How many times have we done that? Because we don't know. The particular relevant in this case with SCBA used by firefighters because of why? Because they believe we're never exposed long enough to excessive heat to affect the cylinder properties. Because even if we did, we would feel sufficient discomfort from life-threatening heat before this would occur. Now, does that make sense based on having gear that has TPP as high as 60? By the time you feel heat, if you're wearing like a Houston spec gear that is as high as 60, that bottle is a lot hotter than 160. And are they sending their stuff off to get tested? Who is? Yeah. We are not addressing this at all. Look at my good friend and fellow instructor, Jake Latson here. Look at his bottle. You think it experienced hotter than 160 degrees Fahrenheit by simply showing these firefighters what a down firefighter looks like when he lays on the floor, that you can see the bottle, you can see him, how his gear starts to blend in as it's superheated. His gear is absorbing heat, so it causes him to blend in, but his bottle was darker because it's cold from the compressed air, but his bottle is heating up. So let me challenge you with this. How well are we protected are we again? He's just going over to close a window. Look at his shoulders. In just a few seconds, look at his face piece, his mask, his helmet. He's going to get down because look at this. This is straw and pallets. This is not couches. This is not sectionals and wardrobes and massive amounts of heat release rate that we normally face. See the backside of his hood behind his helmet there? That was the guy who went open the window. Look at the thermal layer we were taught not to disturb, that Brother Jimmy and I and everybody else understands that if that gets below 50%, that's a broiler. That's heating everybody up in the room. It's not good. That's cooking everything in its path, including the victim, the contents, and us, with the high dollar gear that we bought to protect us. So, question and answer time. There's only 18 of us online. You can unmute your mics. I want to ask you some questions. When was the last time your gear and SCBA was inspected? All three layers and face piece. When was the last time your PPE was washed? Dirty, wet, UV damaged gear, you know what it does now. And have any of you read the instructions on your turnout gear, and will you now? And if you don't have a program that includes gear inspection, cleaning, and cancer prevention, it's up to you to implement that. So how many of you have inspected your gear recently? Let's see, we got some people popping up here. But 2 weeks ago, awesome. Inspect and wash. Good job. Who else? Anybody find any problems when they inspected their gear? Some aha moments like, ooh, I didn't know that was there, like what we call bruising. You open it up and you look inside and you see the moisture barrier has big dark spots like on the bottom half back side of your legs where I was sitting on the floor. Last 90 days, part inspection repair cycle with 1851. Awesome. After every incident, it needs to be inspected. Yes, it does, but does it get inspected? SCBA lens, aside from strap replacement, never. Gear is annual or quick visual after wash, gear washed after exposure. Good job. Good job, Chief. The thing is, the SCBA lens is something you can do yourself now. You can actually, if you watch that video from the Illinois Fire Service Institute, they use two cell phones. They use a cell phone with the soft light to inspect it, and then they take another cell phone and they record the inspection, and then they date it. And they say, here we go, we recorded it after this fire, on September 28th, this is when we had the incident. And 1 month later, we had another incident, and we record, look at the difference in this mask. So you're showing the difference in the damage, and it's documented saying, this is why I need the mask replaced. By the way, if your logistics won't replace your mask, show that picture, do that video, then send it to them. You'll get your mask replaced. Just data that you can use. So speaking of masks, this is from Ottawa Fire Service. A good friend of mine challenged me with this. When you don't feel like wearing your mask, just determine which mask you want to wear. The one you wear for a few minutes in your fire, or the one you wear for the remaining parts of your life fighting cancer. Because cancer affects 1/3 of the population. How much of the fire service does it affect? Much more. Boston, it's like 2/3 of them can get cancer. So we already have a higher chance of getting it just living in America, and then you become a firefighter, you got an even more increased chance of getting it. And if you're like my family who has a genetic toxic cocktail, you've added those factors in there. That's not good. As they say, your SCBA air is free. Breathe it, wear it, use it, take care of your gear, it'll take care of you. And everything I give you tonight, I'm going to put all this in a Dropbox folder for you to look at. This is the works cited. This is one of 5 different pages of information, but this is where it came from. The PowerPoints from the Fiero conference, I've got them in there for you. You can take it, use it, because here's the thing. I'm not here to make money. Yes, I charge y'all to be here because it takes a lot of work to do it, but here's my goal. I want you to take all this information, including this recording, and I want you to share it with the change agents of your department, your firefighters, and educate them on how their gear works and how you can take care of it and take care of each other. Because all this stuff I read online, all this stuff I got from these people, this information is free, but it doesn't do any good if we don't read it. From the cancer industries, like the Firefighter Cancer Support Network, to the International Firefighters, to Fire Decks, to MSA, to NC State, to Globe, to NFPA, to NIOSH, to NIST, to some of my friends from KTF and others.